From Evoke Media, I'm Sabrina Mirage Naeem. With me is Cassia Binkowski, and this is Breaking Glass, a series of conversations with women around the world who are shattering glass ceilings and challenging social norms. They are audacious, gutsy, and their stories are echoed across borders and generations in a rallying cry that is changing the narrative for women everywhere. We're headed back to Kenya today, where we're speaking with Rebecca Crook and Deborah Odenyi. Rebecca grew up in California, Deborah grew up in rural Kenya, and yet we're talking to them both in Nairobi, where they've found their respective paths to working in education. Rebecca is the co-founder of Metis Collective, an organization that identifies and mobilizes local leaders to transform the education system in Kenya. Deborah is a former teacher and administrator who is currently working as an education consultant for Girl Rising, an international organization harnessing the power of storytelling to change the way the world values girls and their education. Today, these women are educating us on the barriers girls face, the systems that need to change, and the impact that it can have on society at large when more girls are educated.
Sabrina, this is a topic that really fires me up. Coming from a background in global health, I remember learning years ago about just how transformational access to education can be for girls. More than 130 million girls around the world are still not in school. The need is truly tremendous. And when these girls have access to education, it changes everything. Literacy levels, health outcomes, child survival, when they marry, how much they earn, how healthy their kids are. The list goes on and on. Rebecca and Deborah have an intimate understanding of what this work looks like on the ground in Kenya, and they're sharing their own personal stories about why education is so important to them. Take a listen.
All right, Deborah and Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us today. This is a bit of an unusual setup for us because we have never had two guests join us simultaneously, but your work is so synergistic. You guys have a lot of shared experiences, and we felt like it would be really interesting to have two different perspectives on the issue of girls' education as a mechanism for gender equity. So first things first, we'd love to hear a little bit from each of you about your story, how you ended up in education. So Rebecca, why don't you go first, and then we'll hear from Deborah.
Started my journey in education as a bilingual kindergarten teacher in my home state of California. And those 5-year-olds and their families completely changed my life. I think I learned just as much as, if not more, those years teaching in Richmond, California. But always really thought, no offense to our American listeners there, but for me, the United States just seemed like really an impoverished place to live. And so I was really keen to learn and work alongside others outside of the United States. And so supported a network of low-fee private schools in South Africa and lived there for a few years, and made my way to Nairobi in 2016, supporting school leaders, and now a broad community of education changemakers.
And Deborah, what about you?
Thank you so much, Cassie and Sabrina, too, for having us here today. I started my journey of education way back, inspired by my mom, who was also a teacher. I like the way she worked in school. I happened to go to the same primary school where my mom taught. And so I loved the way she worked and always told myself I would be a teacher one day. And so happened, and I've taught in school systems for 25 years. And at the end of 2017, I decided I would love to work with girls more because I felt the need to serve more girls, because I've worked with institutions providing education for girls. And so I thought I would get out of the confines of school and work more with girls and communities, women as well, in promoting the education of girls. And I became an independent consultant on education matters, supporting organizations that work with girls in empowering them with an education and life skills, supporting them to achieve their dreams in life. And so, yeah, that's what I'm doing now, finding platforms with organizations that support education of girls.
So you two grew up in two completely different corners of the world, and yet you obviously share a really deep passion for education and access to education. In what ways is this work personal for you? I mean, in what ways has your own access to education kind of shaped where you are today?
What passionately drives me to do this is I'm a single mother of a daughter, and I have raised her up single-handedly. And this thought that she has succeeded and been able to complete college and start work in the corporate world successfully keeps reminding me how many other girls out there do not have access to education because of one reason or another.
And I think that just shows that it's such a multi-generational issue where you were able to gain the influence from your mother, and now you are influencing your daughter. And because you're seeing that strong lineage of women in a family can impact from one generation to another so significantly, there are other girls in the community who are now gaining the benefit of your passion and your knowledge and experience for knowing and understanding the impact of education for girls, particularly in impoverished areas, girls who otherwise would not have the same access. So I think that's incredible. Rebecca, what about you?
So in my case, I also come from a family of educators. Both my grandmother and my grandfather were teachers. And my grandfather in particular, I think really shaped me from a young age. We would play cards together for hours at the dining room table. And our favorite thing to do besides while playing cards was to tell stories. And so I'd listen to my grandfather tell all sorts of stories. And I remember him telling me, you know, Rebecca, when I was your age, I had to pack my life into bags we could carry. And he didn't get to finish high school because the American government, you know, interned 100,000 Japanese Americans, rounded them up and put them in imprisonment camps, essentially. And so I learned from a young age that, you know, systems work for some people, but they don't work for all people. And I knew that I wanted to do something that was, you know, could help shift those systems in some way. And I think for my grandfather and for many others in my family, education has really been a way to really enable people to have the skills and knowledge that they need to thrive.
It's clear that it's so deeply personal for both of you. Rebecca, when did your paths cross? When did you and Deborah meet?
Debbie, you'll have to fact check me on this, but I think it was 2017, and she was the headmistress at an amazing network of schools called Shining Hope for Communities, or SHOFCO, and got to visit the school, got to meet Debbie and learned of her work, and at the time, my co-founder and I were piloting essentially an accelerator for education innovators. And so I've got to meet Debbie then and then watch and support her kind of launch into this independent powerhouse and many other education organizations.